What's up, guys? Today's video will be about this pen here, and really more about, I guess, this pen's particular brand. As you can see here, based off of the top of the cap, we have like a nice white snow peak mountain style thing. This is a Montblanc. I finally got myself a 146. Montblanc kind of has like a love it or hate it type of relationship where you have people who are really in love with the company and they love their pens, and you see them get large numbers of 146s, 149s. They try and collect the writer edition pens and all the other limited edition pens. And then you have the other side of the spectrum where people really hate the brand just because of how much the pens cost. I believe like just a normal Montblanc 146 retails, you can get for like around 500. The 149 maybe around like $800 or $900. And this is just for the most basic of pens. Obviously once you get into the limited edition pens, they start running into the thousands and above. This pen I did not buy brand new. I honestly just can't put like $500 down for a fountain pen at the moment. Although I did buy the M650 and that was getting kind of close. But I mean, I justify the M650 basically because it's discontinued and it's a nice gold plated silver, vermeil cap. It's a little too plain for me to really put down $500 for. I did basically buy this secondhand. I didn't get that great of a price for it because honestly I didn't buy it off of eBay. When you go on eBay and you search Montblanc, you do find a lot of used 146s. Not so much that many 149s, but a lot of 146s you find used, and they generally sell for, depending on the condition, obviously, they sell from like, I would say like $2 to $350 used. And this I got kind of like midpoint. I'm not gonna really say how much. I got it for because I did get it from the classifieds, so it's from the Fountain Pen Network classifieds. So it's not really a good gauge about what you can get this pen for. eBay prices are more where you're gonna find it. I think I probably could have gotten it off of eBay for like $10 or $20 cheaper, but in my mind, I really don't like buying used fountain pens, and for me, buying it off a fountain pen forum, it feels a little bit better because I feel like people that are on the forums that collect and write with fountain pens on a regular basis, they know how to take care of their pens. And people on eBay, you don't know who they are and where they got the pens. A lot of times, Montblancs that are on eBay, they were like bought as gifts for someone, and then that person is either trying to sell it because they don't have a use for a fountain pen, or it was like passed down from like a father to son, and he has no use for the fountain pen, so he's trying to sell it. So you don't know how much care was given to the pen. You don't know what the condition in it is. So for me, buying it off a forum, off a fountain pen forum, or if you go to like a pen show and you buy it used at a pen show, it's gonna be a little more than eBay, but at least it'll be in pretty decent shape. This particular pen, I'm not 100% sure of how old it is. Based off of the signs of like the clip and the text on the band here, on the cap band, as well as the ink window. You can see here I didn't fill it yet, so you can see the ink window does not have the lines going through it. I forget offhand what they're called. Instead, the ink window is like, it's like a gray. It's hard to tell because when they transition pens around like the 70s and 80s, I think they went from a clear blue ink window to like a clear gray ink window. And then, but the problem is, like, what happens with the gray windows is they end up discoloring over time. From what I can tell, after I flush this pen out with a pen flush, it's actually pretty nice and clean inside now. It's like a gray window. It also has a monotone 14 karat nib, carat with a K, not with the C. It's not gonna focus, is it? Focus. Come on, camera. Anyway, whatever, that's not important. The lettering on here is also like a smaller font on the lettering here versus like the newer ones, and the back of the clip band has West Germany engraved into it, not just Germany. So this, I guess, either this clip was made before the wall went down, and they were just using leftover material, or I believe in like the 70s is when the clip, like late 70s is when that was labeled as West Germany. But with this ink window, I believe that was like in the 80s, like early 80s and on. So I'm gonna say this pen is either like late 70s or early 80s. I got it in great shape. There is some scuffing on here that you probably won't be able to make out, basically because it was a user pen, but it's not like any deep scratches or gouges in it. It's like light surface scuffing, which I could probably buff or like polish out. I did get some pen polish that I'm gonna try and clean it up a little bit. Piston works relatively well. I feel it is a little stiff, but I'm not really sure how easy the pistons on newer, or what is like considered a newer Montblanc should feel like. I don't know if this pen was ever sent out for service or anything. I haven't sent it out just for service myself. It is a little stiffer than like my Pelican piston knobs, but I think most people would agree that Pelican makes some of the best pistons in the fountain pen world. That's in general what people consider anyway. I'm not necessarily saying that is true. And also about the nib, it's a medium nib. I am glad I got the monotone nib. I think it just looks amazing. It almost has like a rose gold kind of look to it, because of, obviously since it's only 14 karat gold, whatever the gold is alloyed with, it kind of gives it a nice like reddish patina, makes it look kind of like a rose gold, which I really like. I guess the dual tone, and I think they make a tritone nib. Those look flashier, I suppose. But for a pen when you get a pen like this style, it's not meant to really be super flashy. Like the flashiest thing about it is the gold furniture. Other than that, it's a very simple looking pen, and I just feel like in hand, writing with like that monotone nib looks a lot better than writing with like a dual tone nib. My Pelicans have dual tone nibs. I have my M600 here, and you can see that there is like, it's silver and gold. But at the same time, because the nib isn't as large and there isn't as much of a difference in between the two different tones on the nib, it's not as flashy as if you were to get like a 149 with its huge nib that was like dual tone or tritone, or even this, where if you just had like, I don't know. I just prefer the look of this pen. I'm gonna fill it up and show you guys how it writes. I have some Noodler's Apache Sunset here, which is a nice shading ink. It's not the first time I'm filling up this pen. I have filled it up before. Piston works with no issues. Holds a decent amount of ink. And the pen overall just writes really well. Pretty happy. It's actually quite smooth. I don't know if this pen ever had any nib work done to it, any nib smoothing. Like I said, because it's not new, I can't really say that this is how Montblancs will come from the factory. But it writes really well, in my opinion. Like, it may also be because it's a medium nib, and obviously with medium nibs, it's a lot easier to get a smooth nib versus with finer nibs that I usually buy on my other pen brands. Those write a little scratchier sometimes, and you have to kind of work the nib a little bit to get it to write nice and buttery smooth. When I first got this pen in the mail and I opened the package, I felt like, wow, this is actually a really well-made pen. It's actually like quite heavy. I don't know whether it's because of the precious resin is like a little thicker or something, but it just has like a good hefty feel to it. This does have a brass piston in the back, which I guess is one of the bigger differences between that and my M600. The 600 line does not have brass piston. It actually has all plastic. Once you get to the M800 and M1000, that's when you get like the back brass pistons that makes the pen a little more back heavy. This, like I said, is a little back heavy, but it's not so bad because it's not as such super long of a pen as say like the M1000. Comparing the two pens, actually I guess a fair comparison would be the Pelican M800 with the 146, and the 149 with the M1000. But since I don't own an 800, I'm comparing it to the M600. So like I said, it's a medium nib, and it writes really, really smooth. And it writes pretty wet. Let me just... Yeah, you can see like it writes very wet. Which is actually an issue with cheaper papers. I tried writing with this pen on like sub 20 pound copy paper, and the line just became super thick. I actually had Noodler's X Feather in this pen, and when I wrote on cheap paper, it almost looked like I was writing with a Sharpie. So I basically flushed that out, and I couldn't write with it and use it every day for work. But you can see, nice wet ink. It's not focusing. There we go. Nib size is pretty decent. Obviously, with Apache Sunset, you get really nice shading regardless. But you know, one thing about Apache Sunset is when you write it with a very, very wet nib that like oversaturates the paper, you end up not really getting as much of the yellow tones, and you just get more of an orange tone. If you write with like a more medium wetness nib, there are points where you'll get really nice orange tones and then the lighter yellows. And then if you write with Apache Sunset in a really dry nib, you just get more yellow than you do orange. So this I would consider on the wetter side. Not really much else to say about the pen. Actually, one thing when I was considering buying this M600 was that I was actually considering both of these pens as my first expensive pen purchase, like over $200 pen purchase. In the end, I decided to go with the Pelicans, basically just because I could remove the nib, and for me that would mean it would be easier to flush the pens out and clean, and also if you had to, you could grease up the pistons with silicone, with like a silicone grease to make the piston a little smoother. The problem with Montblancs, and I think a lot of people don't like them, is you can't do any sort of maintenance on it yourself. I believe the nib and feed pull out of the section, and then inside is like a retaining ring for the nib and the feed. The back piston you can't just unscrew. It's not like a TWSBI pen where you could use the wrench and unscrew it. Obviously with the plastic piston Pelicans you can't unscrew either, but at least you could unscrew the nib, and then not have to worry about realigning it. Once you take the nib and feed out of here, you do have to worry about making sure everything's lined up properly. And I'm not really sure how easy it is to actually remove the nib and feed from the section of this pen. If you actually look, there are actually two slots here in the next to the nib and the feed, and then there are also two holes in the piston that I suppose when you send the pen out to Montblanc, they have a special tool that allows them to unscrew it and service your pen. Obviously, I have seen people go on eBay and buy wrenches custom made to open Montblancs, but for me, I'm not a pen repair guy, so I'd rather not. But that basically means that in order to flush this pen out, I do have to fill and empty the piston multiple times in order to clear out the pen, versus with the Pelican I can unscrew the nib and section and then just flush it out really quickly with water. And that also means I can't grease up the piston, which I think is why like this piston is a little bit tight. This pen is basically like 30 years old, probably around 30 years old. And if it's never been sent in for service, I'm sure like the silicone grease that they use in there or whatever is starting to either not be as effective or wear out or whatever. Montblanc, when you send it out, I think they have like 3 different fixed values of service. At least in the US, I think it goes from like $80 to $150 to like 200 something, and then at that point like you get different services in those ranges. Like at the lowest range, I believe they'll repair like the piston and body and section and the cap, and then they reuse the gold clip and the nib. If you go to the second highest service level, I believe they will replace the clip as well, and then the third and final service level will be replacing the nib as well as everything else. Basically, like you can send it out to Montblanc, pay for the most expensive service, and get like a brand new modern pen back. Now, with this pen, because it's an older vintage pen, I believe this does have an ebonite feed on it instead of just a plain plastic feed like the current Montblancs have. So I know, some people prefer ebonite feeds over plastic. I've used, Japanese pens and, even this Pelikan, like modern pens, they generally use plastic feeds. I've had no issues with them. I don't really have any bias towards either ebonite or plastic. I don't see myself sending this pen back to Montblanc unless something drastic happens, like the piston breaks or whatever, like it starts leaking from the section. Other than that, I'm probably not going to send it back just because I kind of want this pen to remain as is, like an era accurate pen versus having modern parts swapped into it if I don't need them. And plus, adding on another $80 isn't exactly cheap. Now, what do I think about Montblancs in general? For me, like I said, I can't really see myself buying any of these pens brand new, just because they cost a lot of money for what you get. Limited editions are a different story, because they are limited, they're more collectible, but for pens like 146s and 149s, they're not really collectible unless you have something that's like from the 50s or something, and even then those people are very selective in what they'll buy, and the market that you have is much smaller than it is with the limited editions where people may want to finish up their collections and they need a certain pen. I would have no problems buying a second Montblanc. I do have a 149 as one of the pens on my bucket list. For me as a fountain pen user, a 146 or a 149, it's kind of like an icon in the pen world, and I wanted one for my collection, so I have no regrets getting this pen. And just honestly, like the build quality of it, just picking it up and holding it in your hand and writing with it, it feels really good. Is it better than the M600? I don't know. I mean, the pen in general is a little heavier than M600, but construction and materials is a little different. I'm not going to necessarily say that the 146 is more durable than the M600, and I like both pens. And like, I had no problems buying a second M600 in the form of the M650, so, I would definitely get more Pelikans. The only reason why I didn't get an M800 or M1000 is because I felt it was a little too big and too bag heavy for me compared to M600. With the 146 and the 149, don't really have much of a choice. These, those are two flavors of pens. There's no, at least current modern 146 that comes with a plastic piston to lighten up the back, so oh well. If I came up with a ridiculous amount of money, that like disposable income, then sure, maybe I would buy a brand new pen. But for me, because I actually prefer the simpler pens in the 146 and the 149 versus the limited editions, I can go on the secondary market and buy them. The 149s, I believe, on the secondary market go from like $350 to $450 depending on condition. So in the future, I definitely see myself getting a 149. I don't know if I'll necessarily get another 146, although maybe I'll get one in fine or have the nib reground down. But yeah, I guess that's my position on Montblanc in general. They're kind of a lifestyle brand now, and they're good and bad things to it. The bad is like people kind of look at you and they kind of see this on the top, and they kind of just think that you're like, it's like I guess I kind of consider Montblanc as like the Rolex of pen world, where you have people who are real, watch snobs, and they look at Rolex and they say, oh, it's just like an overpriced watch and there's nothing really super special about it. And then on the other end, you have people who buy Rolexes just because it's an expensive watch and they want to just kind of be flashy and show off their wealth. Montblanc, it's kind of the same way. It's become a lifestyle brand where pen snobs may look at them and say, oh my god, I can't believe you paid $1,000 for a pen made out of precious resin. It's all marketing. But at the same time, people may want to buy a Montblanc and say, oh look, I have a Montblanc, I have a expensive pen, look at me. And I'm not gonna lie, one of the reasons why I wanted a 146 was because it's an expensive pen. I'm just not willing to pay that expensive price. But at the same time, I obviously have flashier pens than the 146. Actually, Oh, let me get my pen case out. Oops, sorry. Ugh. Just kind of eating up camera time, but whatever. If you've watched up to this point, you're probably going to finish off the video anyway. You know, like, yeah, if I want a flashy pen, I could buy a 146 brand new. It's a $1,000 pen. It has that white splotch on the top. Or I could carry around my M650. You know, I can always, because they're both 600 series size pens, I can always just do this. Swap it out for the black body over the green stripes. And all of a sudden, like, this is a much, you know, in my opinion, the 650 is a much flashier pen than the Montblanc 146. So it's not all about flash. I do appreciate the pens as pens, not necessarily as a statement of wealth. Because honestly, I'm not that wealthy of a person anyway. I just happen to have this as a hobby, so I'll put more of my disposable income towards it versus other people who think for me to put down $100 on like a Lamy 2000 or a Pilot Custom 94 is ridiculous. So yeah, take it for what it's worth. Just remember, no one really forces you to buy expensive pens. If you want to buy an expensive pen, you know, it's not a linear scale. Don't expect that the more money you put into the pen, the more performance you're going to get. Because in all honesty, a Pilot 78G, which is a $10 pen on eBay, writes basically as good as these pens. Like, and these pens obviously are on a much larger, more pricier scale. You know, I made a video about like different pen ranges, and I believe I stated in the video that once you get past the $200 mark, you start losing performance value, and it's more about materials and brand value. And it definitely holds true for these two pens. You can get a Sailor 1911 pen with a 21 karat gold nib, which is in the same style. It's basically like an homage to the Montblanc 146s. You get one of those pens for $200 brand new. And if you want to talk about gold value, you know, well, that has a 21 karat gold nib versus this with a 14 karat gold nib. So just in terms of like gold melt raw materials value, that's more expensive of a pen. But because this has the brand behind it, this, when it sells brand new, and people are willing to pay more for that brand. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.